The reassignment letter is 2 paragraphs long, and Daniel Reeves reads it twice in the stairwell between the 8th floor and the 7th, because the 8th floor is where his old office was, and the 7th is where his new desk will be, and the stairwell is the only place in the Harmon Group's Chicago headquarters where nobody will see him process the distance between those 2 floors. He is 47 years old. For 11 years, he managed the Harmon Group's mid-market client development division, a role he built from a 4-person team into a 22-person operation with a client portfolio that, when the last good year was good, generated the kind of revenue that got mentioned in board presentations and attributed in those presentations to strong strategic positioning and market momentum, rather than to the 11 years of daily, specific, undramatic work that Daniel Reeves and his team had done to build and sustain it. Then the Alderton account collapsed. The Alderton account was, for 18 months, the largest single contract in the division's history, a regional infrastructure firm that had expanded aggressively into 3 new markets simultaneously and that Daniel's team had been brought in to support on the client development side of that expansion. The expansion failed. Not because of anything Harmon Group did or didn't do. The postmortem that a consulting firm subsequently produced attributed the failure to Alderton's internal capital structure and a market timing error, but because Alderton's failure produced a significant revenue gap in Daniel's division, and revenue gaps in divisions require explanations, and explanations require accountability, and accountability, in organizational practice, requires a name. Daniel Reeves's name was on the Alderton account. He did not argue this. He understood, with the specific tired clarity of someone who has watched enough institutional responses to failure to recognize the pattern, that the argument was not the point, and that making it would cost more than it would achieve. He accepted the reassignment with the specific quiet dignity of someone who has decided that their integrity is not contingent on whether the institution currently agrees with it. The reassignment is to the Legacy Transition Office. He folds the letter. He puts it in his jacket pocket. He goes down to the 7th floor. The Legacy Transition Office occupies 3 rooms in the northeast corner of the 7th floor, a corner that receives morning light until approximately 10 a.m. and then is overtaken by the shadow of the adjacent building, which is a detail that feels, to Daniel on his first morning, like the building itself is editorializing. The LTO exists to manage Harmon Group's long-term client relationships that are, for various reasons, in the process of concluding, accounts that have been with the firm for 15, 20, sometimes 30 years and whose principals are retiring or whose businesses are being sold or whose circumstances have changed in ways that mean the relationship is winding down rather than growing. The work is considered, throughout Harmon Group's offices, to be exactly what it sounds like, an ending. Something that needs to be managed but not built. Appropriate for people who are finishing something rather than beginning it. The LTO has 3 other staff when Daniel arrives. A junior coordinator named Keisha, 24, who looks at Daniel's arrival with the specific wariness of someone who understands that a demotion has just landed in their department and is assessing whether that means help or additional weight. A part-time administrative specialist named Frank, 61, who has worked for Harmon Group for 23 years and who regards the operation with the peaceful equanimity of someone who has long since stopped measuring his professional life against other people's definitions of important. And a senior account manager named Beverly, 52, who has been managing the LTO's 4 largest concluding accounts for 2 years and who knows more about Harmon Group's institutional history, its client relationships, its internal politics, and the specific, complicated emotional texture of long-term business partnerships approaching their ends than anyone else in the building. Beverly looks at Daniel across the small conference table on his first morning and says, without preamble, "What do you actually know about long-term client management?" 11 years of it, Daniel says. "I mean the endings," Beverly says. "Not the growth part. The part where you're sitting with someone who spent 30 years building something and they're handing it to someone else, and your job is to be the person from the firm who's present for that in a way that actually means something to them." Daniel is quiet for a moment. I don't think I know that part, he says. Beverly nods.
No.
Most people don't. Most people who end up here didn't ask to come. She pauses. But you answered honestly, which is a better start than most. What Daniel had actually spent 11 years doing was learning how businesses work from the inside out. Not theoretically, not from financial statements alone, but from the specific, granular understanding that comes from sitting across from business owners and operators for enough years to understand not just what they're trying to accomplish but why it matters to them and what the difference is between those two things. He was, by any fair accounting, exceptionally good at understanding people, not in the performed way of salespeople who are good at mirroring and rapport building as techniques, but in the deeper, more uncomfortable way of someone who actually wanted to know why the person across from them had made the choices they had made and what those choices had cost them and what they were protecting and what they were afraid of. This quality had made him very effective at client development because clients gave business to people they trusted, and trust, in the kind of work Daniel did, was built not through performance but through the specific quality of attention that made people feel genuinely understood rather than strategically cultivated. It had also made him, at various points in his career, uncomfortable to manage, because the same quality of direct, non-performed attention that worked beautifully with clients worked less beautifully in internal organizational contexts where raising concerns directly was described as lacking political awareness. He had navigated it with a smile for 11 years. Then Alderton failed, and the navigation stopped matching. The assignment nobody mentions when they hand Daniel the LTO roster, the one Beverly describes on his third day with the specific careful tone of someone delivering information about an unexploded device, is the Whitmore account. Raymond Whitmore is 71 years old and has been a client of Harmon Group for 29 years. He built Whitmore Industrial Supply from a regional distributor with 12 employees into a multi-state operation employing 470 people. 3 years ago, he began the process of selling the company to a private equity firm, a transaction that has been managed imperfectly through 2 previous Harmon Group account managers, both of whom requested transfers after extended periods of working with Raymond Whitmore. Why did they transfer? Daniel asks. Beverly looks at him in a way that contains several things at once. Raymond is 71 years old. He's been building this company since he was 42. He started it the year his first wife died, which I know because he told me when I took over the account and which matters because he built it partly as a way of surviving that. His son didn't want it. He sold the company to people who are going to restructure it. He understands this. He agreed to it. And he is, by his own account, fine with it. Beverly pauses. He is not fine with it. And the previous account managers found the emotional complexity of the situation difficult to manage professionally. Raymond is not an easy person to sit with when he's being honest about something hard. He asks questions that don't have good answers, and he knows they don't have good answers, and he's not asking because he expects an answer. He's asking because he needs to say them out loud to someone who isn't going to look away. Daniel is quiet for a moment. When do I meet him? He says. They meet at Whitmore Industrial Supply's main distribution facility in Joliet, which Raymond has insisted on for every meeting with Harmon Group representatives for 29 years, because he does not go to other people's offices when the matter at hand concerns his company and his people. Raymond Whitmore meets Daniel in the parking lot at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. He is 71, compact, and still physically capable, with the specific quality of attention of someone who spent 30 years paying attention to things that mattered and never lost the habit. He looks at Daniel for a moment without speaking. You're the one they sent after Collins transferred. Yes, Daniel says. Collins couldn't handle it, Raymond says. It is not a complaint. It is an assessment. I know, Daniel says. Raymond looks at him again. What happened to you? Your file says mid-market client development. You don't come from there to here unless something went wrong. The Alderton account. Regional infrastructure. The client expanded into 3 markets and the expansion failed. I was the account lead. Was it your fault? Daniel considers this with the specific honesty that Beverly told him was the only thing Raymond Whitmore could not tolerate the absence of. The post-mortem said no. I think I missed some warning signs I should have caught earlier. The outcome would probably have been the same, but I might have positioned us better for it. Raymond Whitmore is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "Come inside. I want to show you something." What Raymond shows him is the company. Not the financial statements. Not the operational metrics. The company itself, the distribution floor, the loading docks, the dispatch office where a woman named Cora has worked for 19 years and knows the delivery logistics of 3 states by memory, the warehouse manager named Al who has been with Whitmore Industrial since Raymond hired him at 23 and who is now 51 and has turned down 3 recruitment calls from competitors in the past 18 months because he has not yet decided what he owes the company and what the company owes him. Raymond shows him all of this without narrating it. He walks Daniel through the facility for 2 hours, stopping to talk to people by name, asking specific questions that are not performative check-ins but the actual questions of someone who knows the operation well enough to know what to ask. Daniel watches this. He watches the way people respond to Raymond, not with the specific careful warmth of employees managing an aging founder's feelings, but with something more direct and less performed, the specific quality of people who have been known by someone for a long time and who know that the person who knows them is about to be replaced by a structure that will not. After 2 hours, they sit in Raymond's office. They're going to restructure the distribution network, Raymond says. The PE firm. Within 18 months of closing. Yes, Daniel says. Cora won't survive a restructured distribution network. She's 63 and she does her job in a way that doesn't translate to systems. Al will probably be fine, they'll keep him for continuity, but they won't know what they have so they'll underuse him for 2 years and then he'll leave. That's probably right, Daniel says. So what am I supposed to do with that? Raymond says, not angrily, genuinely. Daniel is quiet for a long moment. I don't know if there's a good answer, he says. I think there are some partial ones. I think there are things that can be documented about Cora's institutional knowledge specifically, that create a record that the incoming management would have to actively choose to ignore rather than simply not knowing. I think the transition documentation that Harmon Group produces can be written for the people in this building rather than for the PE firm's file. It's not the same as the outcome you would have chosen. But it's not nothing. Raymond looks at him for a long moment. The last 2 people they sent told me that change was part of growth and that the transition would go smoothly. I know, Daniel says.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, Raymond says. Be useful. That's different. Raymond looks at the photograph on his desk. You know what I haven't been able to get out of anyone from your firm? He says. The real transition document. Not the financial one. The one that says what this place actually is. Daniel is quiet. I think I understand what you mean, he says. Good, Raymond says. Then let's see if you can do it. Daniel works the Whitmore account for 6 weeks before he understands what it actually is. Not the account. He understands the account within the first 2 weeks. What takes 6 weeks to understand is the shape of the thing Raymond Whitmore is actually trying to accomplish, which is not, as the assignment summary describes it, a managed transition to new ownership. It is a record. Raymond Whitmore has spent 29 years with Harmon Group, and in those 29 years he has, with the specific thoroughness of someone who understood that institutions have short memories, kept records, not financial records but institutional records. Notes on conversations. Observations about how relationships developed. The specific history of how this company, built by one person from one idea in a year of grief, became something that 470 people built their professional lives around. He has been trying, with two previous Harmon Group account managers, to turn those records into something, a document, a history, a formal account of what this company is and was and how it became that, and both previous account managers had understood the request as a standard transition document request and had produced standard transition documentation that captured the financial and operational facts and nothing that Raymond actually wanted captured. What are you actually trying to preserve? Daniel asks on the 6th week, having spent 5 weeks watching Raymond circle a thing he could not quite name. Raymond is quiet for a long time. The people, he says finally, not as employees, as the thing the company actually was. When the PE firm finishes restructuring, what was here will be gone. Not wrong, gone. And I would like there to be a record that it existed, that these specific people built something specific, and it wasn't just a revenue line. That's not a transition document, Daniel says. No, Raymond says. It's not. It's closer to a history. Yes. Daniel looks at the photograph on Raymond's desk. He thinks about 30 years of a company built in the year a man's first wife died. Give me 4 weeks, he says. Not a transition document. The other thing, what Daniel produces over 4 weeks, is not something Harmon Group has produced before for a concluding client. He interviews 23 people over 3 weeks. Not for operational documentation, Cora knows this. He tells her, I'm not here to document the routing system, I'm here to document you, what you know and why it matters and how you learned it and what it cost you and what you're proud of. He interviews Al and Denny and a woman named Sylvia who has run the invoicing department for 14 years and who, in 35 minutes of conversation, tells Daniel more about the specific texture of how this company treats its people than any HR document has ever contained. He interviews Raymond 3 times, each interview longer than the last, each one going further into the history that Raymond has been trying to articulate for 2 years. He asks Raymond about the year his first wife died. He asks because it is the year the company began, and you cannot understand the beginning without understanding what it was built from. Raymond answers at length, in the specific way of someone who has been carrying a story for 30 years and has not found many people willing to hold it with him. He writes the document, not a report, not a transition memo, but something closer to what Raymond described. A history told through the people who made it, grounded in the specific details that give institutional history its actual texture. 47 pages. Named for the people in it. Written so that the people described in it would recognize themselves, and so that anyone who read it without knowing them would understand what they had built and why it mattered. He shares a draft with Raymond on a Friday afternoon. Raymond reads it at the conference table in his office while Daniel sits across from him, and he reads it for a long time, and when he finishes he does not say anything for almost 3 minutes, which is a silence Daniel has learned, over 6 months in the legacy transition office, to sit with rather than fill. This is it, Raymond says finally. I think so, Daniel says. They're still going to restructure, Raymond says. Yes, Daniel says. But this exists now. Yes, Daniel says. It does. Raymond looks at Daniel with the specific directness that Beverly had described. You knew how to do this because you lost something too, Raymond says. Daniel does not answer immediately. He thinks about the Alderton account, about the postmortem, about the stairwell between the 8th floor and the 7th. Maybe, he says, or maybe I just listened better here than I did before. Raymond nods slowly. Same thing, he says. Sometimes. The Whitmore record circulates within Harmon Group in a way that Daniel did not anticipate and did not engineer. Beverly reads it first. She reads it twice and then sends Daniel a message that says simply, "This is the thing we should have been doing all along." The LTO's current account list has 6 other concluding relationships, long-term clients in the process of ending, each one with a story that the standard transition documentation captures in financial and operational terms and in no other terms at all. Beverly pulls up the account summaries. She looks at Daniel. "We should do this for all of them," she says. "That's not what the LTO was designed to do," Daniel says. "No," Beverly says, "but it's what they need. And it turns out we have someone who knows how to do it." This conversation reaches, through Beverly's methodical internal advocacy, the attention of Harmon Group's managing director, a woman named Andrea Croft, 58, who reads the Whitmore record over a weekend and calls Daniel on a Monday morning with a specific question. "How long does this take to produce, and can it be replicated?" Daniel thinks about 23 interviews and 4 weeks of writing and 35 minutes with Sylvia in the invoicing department. "The process can be replicated," he says. "The time depends on the account. It's not a template, it can't be or it doesn't work, but the approach can be taught." Andrea Croft has read the Whitmore record twice. She has also spent a week reviewing the LTO's complete account history and has arrived at a conclusion she states without preamble. "We have been managing these relationships as administrative wind-downs. We have been wrong about what they are. Long-term clients are not just revenue lines that are concluding. They are relationships that have lasted through significant portions of people's professional lives, and the way we end those relationships is a signal to every other long-term client about what kind of institution we are." "Yes," Daniel says. "What you did with the Whitmore account is relationship management at the point where most firms stop doing it," she says. "That is, if it can be systematized without losing what makes it work, a significant service differentiator. It can be approached systematically," Daniel says. "It can't be templated. There's a difference." "Explain the difference," Andrea says. He explains the difference using Cora as the example, the specific quality of knowledge that Cora carries about routing logistics of 3 states, which is not the kind of knowledge that survives a templated questionnaire but does survive a 2-hour conversation with someone who knows enough to know what questions to ask. Andrea listens. "You know what questions to ask," she says. "I spent 11 years learning what questions to ask," Daniel says. "I just wasn't asking them in the right context." "I want to meet with you this week," Andrea says. "Not about the LTO specifically, about what this could be if it were a formal service offering." Daniel is quiet for a moment. "I'm 7 floors below you," he says. "I know where you are," Andrea says. "I'm asking you to come up." 14 months after Daniel Reeves folds a reassignment letter and walks down 1 flight of stairs, Harmon Group launches the Legacy Client Practice, a formal service offering built around the methodology Daniel developed for the Whitmore account, staffed initially by Daniel, Beverly, and 2 additional account managers recruited for their combination of financial services experience and what Andrea Croft describes in the practice's internal launch materials as the capacity for extended, genuine attention to individual circumstances. Daniel is offered a return to the 8th floor, not to his old role, but to a new designation as practice lead for the Legacy Client Practice, with a reporting line that goes directly to Andrea Croft and a mandate that explicitly says, the work is to be present for what these clients actually need, not what the standard engagement model assumes they need. He takes the office on the 8th floor. He keeps his desk on the 7th. Beverly asks him why. "Because Keisha is down there," he says. "And Frank. And the work is down there. The 8th floor is where you report things. The 7th is where you do them." Beverly looks at him again, and this time what he sees in her face is the specific recognition of someone who has spent a long time in a place that everyone else considered diminished and who has watched that place, against expectation and without drama, become something else. The thing about the people we work with, Beverly says, is that they're at the end of something they built. Most people in this building treat that as a wind down. You treated it as still being worth the full quality of attention. It is still worth it, Daniel says. I know, Beverly says. That's why I've been here for 2 years trying to convince people of that. She pauses. It's easier to convince them now. The practice signs its first external client, a firm not already in Harmon Group's portfolio, within 6 months. That client came from a referral from Raymond Whitmore, who told 3 of his professional contacts that the person Harmon Group had sent him at the end had done something nobody had done before. Raymond Whitmore's sale to the private equity firm closed 4 months after the completion of the Whitmore record. The restructuring of the distribution network occurred 14 months later, as Raymond had predicted. Cora retired with 6 months' notice, her institutional knowledge documented in sufficient detail that the restructuring team requested an interview with her before her departure. Al was named Regional Operations Director 18 months after the closing, a role the PE firm created after 18 months of watching him and understanding belatedly what they had. The Whitmore record was donated by Raymond to the Joliet Chamber of Commerce as part of a local business history archive. Raymond attended the archive's opening. He brought the photograph from his desk, his first wife, Ellen, who died in 1993 in the year the company began. He placed it beside the record. He said, when asked why, because she's in it. She's why it started. She should be where the record is. Daniel Reeves has been the practice lead of the legacy client practice for 18 months. He still has his desk on the 7th floor. He uses it most days. The morning light comes in until about 10 o'clock. He has decided he doesn't mind.